So yeah, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Drupal 7 options. As we know, Drupal 7 is coming to end of life at the beginning of next year. So we want to talk about what that means, the different options that you might have, and yeah, just so you can see what they are and kind of ask questions about it. Today you've got me, Jamie, and Louise. We were going to have Josh from the core team with us, but sadly he's not been able to join us for certain reasons. So yes, we'll be here and we'll be kind of taking you through what exactly, your options are and why it is that we need to care about this, which, is a good place to start. So, um, at this point, we've still got, and those of you who were in the May briefing, the numbers still not vastly dissimilar. We've still got 40.5% of the CiviCRM sites on Drupal 7, which is, almost 3,500 sites. It's still the most widely used. There is definitely a reason for this. It has been an incredibly robust site for, so Drupal 7 for CiviCRM in the past. It powers so many of the different features and extensions. It's got very, very extensive and diverse ecosystem around it. And so many people are still on it. But of course, having said that, the official end of life is coming in January of next year. So we need to be mindful of this. And this means, what does it mean end of life? Well, it means that all the kind of security updates that you're going to get officially will no longer be available, um, coming out anymore. So that's something that you need to kind of be mindful of and think, how do we deal with this? So how do we maintain the options around security? And for that, I'm going to pass over to Jamie.
Great, thank you, Alex, and that for that introduction. So there's actually a few different options in terms of your routes at this point. So if you're sitting on a Drupal 7 site at the moment and you're thinking, oh no, which way do I turn? It's good to have a think about which direction that you want to go in. And so we're just going to talk through those different options, today and try and give you some, high level advice. But obviously, the right route is going to be specific to your circumstance and perhaps what you're looking to do. So the most obvious route is to move to the latest version of Drupal. So if you're working with Drupal and you're with Drupal 7, you've got familiarity with the user experience there. The latest version of Drupal is actually Drupal 11, which came out last month. CiviCRM is compatible with it. What you might find though is that if you're moving to Drupal 11 because it's just come out, some of the contributed modules that are made available in the community may not yet be quite compatible, but certainly going for the latest version, makes sense. Also because it'll have the longest runway. And just to give some understanding of moving to Drupal 11, unfortunately, or Drupal 10 or Drupal 11, unfortunately, it's not a simple upgrade of your site as you would expect for moving from one version of the software to another. When Drupal 7 became Drupal 8, it was basically a big rewrite of the code base to take advantage of a new technical underlying framework. And so that does mean that generally for most sites, it's a significant rewrite or a rebuild of the site and what we would probably call a migration as opposed to an upgrade. So your content would need to be migrated. So it's likely to be quite a big project, probably in the scale of building a new site. And not much will be able to be in terms of code taken from your old site. So you have to redo things like, if you're a bit more technical, themes, views, and modules, etc. But there are a number of powerful tools in the Drupal community to help with that. And to smooth that process, and it is in a well-trodden path. So it's certainly one to look at, but it is probably the equivalent of building a new site. And just to keep in mind that whilst Drupal has been releasing new versions up to date every year, pretty much, we're actually expecting to see biannual upgrades going forward. So just keep in mind that moving from Drupal 10 to 11, you'd have to do that every 2 years, which will be an upgrade that you kind of need to do, and so on. So that's option one, the most obvious. And if we take the next slide, Alex. So another option which some people may be a bit less familiar with is that there is the option to, and we call it here an upgrade to the backdrop CMS. So what is the backdrop CMS? So actually, backdrop CMS is really interesting. When this decision was taken to rewrite Drupal from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 as a new technical framework, there were some people in the community that wanted to make sure that there was still an option for those to continue with the Drupal 7 path. So Drupal backdrop CMS is considered to be Drupal 7, but forked. So it's similar to a fork in the road. It has a shared history, and therefore is much more compatible with Drupal 7. And as such, it's much more of an update than a migration like Drupal 10. So for those who are a bit more technical, you can use your existing database and upgrade it once you've done the necessary work on your code base. I will flag though that there's still a good amount of dev work to be involved. It's not just a drop-in replacement. You will, if you've got a theme or some modules, you need to do a little bit of work to make sure that those have either been ported across to Drupal 10, or especially in the case of themes, I think that those need to be remade basically with the backdrop theming system in mind. But it's certainly a much smaller job than doing the equivalent migration that you would do to a Drupal 10 or 11. And Backdrop does have a few nice new features as well. So in terms of the content editing experience, in terms of the way that they template things, so it's definitely an incremental improvement as well. And this is good if you're looking for that incremental change. You're very happy with your site. You just want it to continue and to go forwards. And so it's with lower risk and lower complexity. And there's a good article on the CiviCRM blog about it as well. Great, and I'll answer a few questions at the end. Perhaps we'll put them to the room. So and if you are looking at these changes, we would suggest not to rule out looking at the other CMSs as well. So CiviCRM is obviously compatible with both WordPress and Joomla as content management systems instead. WordPress is obviously a huge community. A lot of work has been done in terms of integrating CiviCRM into WordPress seamlessly, and form builders and things like that. So there's a lot that you can do with WordPress these days that looks really good. So whilst that might be a change in terms of your user experience for your users, if you're going to spend that time building a new site, then obviously it's worth exploring WordPress and of course Joomla. Both great platforms. But of course, in those cases, you are definitely building a new website, and you will have to consider how you migrate your content. Obviously, moving your content, and that might be a little bit more challenging if you're going to move it from one CMS to another. But you are able to basically pick up your CiviCRM database and move it from one CMS to another with a little bit of technical care and skill. And the community guide is available for WordPress and a similar process for Joomla in order to move your Civi database as is. But if you are using things that you were dependent on from the Drupal 7 side of the integration, you might need to consider how you will rebuild those on those platforms. And there are tools and integrations to do so. But if you're using web forms, use rules heavily on the Drupal side, obviously you need to think about how you're going to replicate that functionality on the WordPress side. Right.
And I just want to say we're very lucky that Coleman Watts has joined us from the Civi core team. So thanks for joining us, Coleman, in Josh's absence.
Sure.
Perhaps you might like to talk us through CiviCRM Standalone.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So CiviCRM Standalone is a project that is very close to completion. Some people have started playing with it. It is, I would say, at the late stages of the beta. At this point, we're just putting some finishing touches on it, such as there is almost finished, but still in testing, is an automatic migration tool that would take a existing Drupal 7 site and migrate it to CiviCRM Standalone, automatically copying all the users and passwords from one site to the other. And so CiviCRM Standalone is intended to be just an instance of CiviCRM that you can log into directly, that's not attached to any particular website. So which would mean that you would need to have some other solution for your website. If you're using Drupal 7 right now for CiviCRM and your website, you would need to do something else for your website. Keep it on Drupal, upgrade Drupal, use some other websites, builder, whatever you want to use, and CiviCRM would stand alone and be something that people could log into separately. And in terms of migrating the things that you are doing with Civi that integrate with the website, probably you have things like contribution pages, possibly you have some views and web forms. So CiviCRM now offers a lot of native solutions for those things. CiviCRM has a form builder, which can do things like put a form up that lets people sign up for your newsletter. CiviCRM has something that is arguably better than views now for Civi, which is SearchKit, which lets you build pages that show lots of data from your database in a lot of different ways, including charts and graphs and maps and calendars. And what it doesn't currently do, but is about to do, is we're currently working on a project to get Form Builder integrated with payments. We are, looking at a couple of months for that project. So look in the next few releases for Form Builder to be able to also take payments so that you can build, more complex forms as you would have with Drupal 7 web forms for doing things like signing up multiple participants for an event, or signing up parents and children separately for, all on the same form. That said, CiviCRM Standalone is not a website per se. It can be exposed to the web, so you can put views and or put search kits and web forms up, but you would need to do something separately for your own website. And if you wanted CiviCRM content in your website, we have another initiative that we're working on, the CiviCRM Remote Form initiative, which would let you basically put a code snippet on your other website that will display Civi content, whether it's SearchKit or web forms, or or Form Builder forms or profiles. And that is and there's also a couple of other remote form solutions for CiviCRM similar that have been developed by others. So there are solutions out there. I would recommend that if you are heavily using things like views and web forms in Drupal 7, you start now, because you can, if you're using a fairly late version of CiviCRM, you can start now by playing with SearchKit and Form Builder to see if you can recreate those same things in a native Civi way, and that would make the transition easier when you do transition.
Thank you. Coleman.
We have another slide on Civi Standalone. Oh no, there you go.
There we go. Okay, over to me. And so another option, fifth option, the last one we're going to talk about today, is Drupal 7 never-ending support for CiviCRM. So basically, CiviCRM, Compuco have partnered with Hero Devs to provide continued Drupal 7 support, never-ending beyond the 5th of January. And so this is basically a really good option if you need a bit more time to decide what you want to do before you make the move. So I feel like a lot of people we're speaking to, there's lots of options out there. We're presenting them all, but some people still aren't sure what the right path is. And so this continued support for Drupal 7 will basically relieve some of that pressure in making that decision and give you more time to, figure things out in an affordable way. So Hero Devs, are Drupal Gold partners. They've been working with the Drupal core contributors and Drupal 7 maintainers. And they've also got experience in providing end of life for other open source projects. So They're a fantastic partner to be providing this. And Compuco and the Civi core team, we've created a really great package for this solution. So we've got an annual subscription, which is a specially negotiated rate. And we are actually able to offer an additional 5% discount code if you use the code CiviD7NES for never-ending support. It's very simple, that the patches will be provided to you. And then you need to either help install yourself or partners can help do that. And the key thing here is that CiviCRM will be kept Drupal 7 compatible. So, while Hero Devs are offering Drupal 7 support, the package that we're offering with the CiviCRM is to continue the CiviCRM Drupal 7 ongoing maintenance as well, which of course is crucial. If you're going to continue running Civi and Drupal 7, you need support for both those sides of things, not just the Drupal 7 side. So this is a really good option if you're an organization that basically also, so if you need more time, but also if you're actually just really happy with your Drupal 7 site. I know a lot of people have made a big investment into their Drupal 7 site and actually want to kind of make the most of it. It's working really great for them. So, if you're not in a position to make a big financial commitment now or in the near future, or if you just want a bit more time to plan, this will really, give you the time that you need to make the most out of the investment you've already done, and also decide on your next path. There are lots of options out there. For example, the Civi Standalone is going to be a fantastic solution. With a bit more time, it might be a more obvious answer for some of you. So again, using the never-ending support in the meantime to help you explore those and test it and try it out will just give you a bit more runway before you need to make that decision. So lots of things to think about there in terms of why you might continue with your Drupal 7 CiviCRM site for now, and then take all of these other options into consideration in the meantime.
Great, thanks for that. So here's just a quick summary of the different options. And so we wanted to share this, and I believe that Josh is going to be putting up a page on civicrm.org with a little bit more information about this if it's not already there. But at one end of the spectrum, oh sorry, is it already there?
Yes.
Oh, it's already there. So at the one end of the spectrum, obviously continuing with Drupal, making that step to the latest and greatest. And there's some amazing features in Drupal 10, 11, AI integration, workflow integration, workflow builders, etc., which are really, really cool. But obviously the downside of that is that there is a bit of a migration project to do there. And it is an enterprise class solution. It does need Symfony and various other infrastructure tools in order to maintain and manage it well. Don't overlook Backdrop. I've read a lot online where people have said, "Oh, if only I'd known that Backdrop existed, they would have gone down that route." So do check it out. There's a lot of stability there in terms of modules and breadth of functionality. Very similar to Drupal 7. Not quite a drop-in replacement, but certainly an upgrade path, and keeping yourself on the open source route. And then, of course, WordPress and Joomla. So if you're looking at your CMS and you do want to continue to have your CiviCRM fully integrated with your CMS, because obviously it saves you some integration challenges. But again, obviously, you need to think about those as big migration projects. Hero Devs, Drupal 7 NES for CiviCRM, probably the easiest solution to give yourself some runway and give yourself more time to make a decision. And then CiviCRM Standalone, which sounds like it's going to be really exciting, and obviously starting to leverage more core functionality from CiviCRM there in the box. So that's just a quick summary.
So yeah, thanks. So I guess kind of to sum up before we open up for questions, if you're not sure what to do, because I know there's lots of different options we presented here. Obviously, we'd say if you already have a partner, definitely talk to that partner and see, what they recommend, because I think lots of different partners have, and going lots of different ways in terms of what they're doing. So ask them for their thoughts on it. And if you do have a preferred solution, again, maybe talk to a partner about it. Some obviously specialize more in WordPress, whereas clearly others specialize more in Drupal 10. So that might help inform, what route you go down there. And there is still plenty of time still to do things. You don't need to kind of go, oh no, it's very much still accomplishable. You can get everything in place, but it is time to start planning and start looking at the options and going, which route should we go down? So that's why we've got the meeting today, just so we've got these options in front of you so you can start making decisions based on that. And, if you do want to go down the Drupal 7 route, get in touch with us and we'd be happy to, for the NAS, we'd be happy to kind of give you some more information on that.
I also just forgot to mention that there are also special deals for agencies. So definitely worth speaking to us also if you're from an agency side and you've got maybe more than one site that needs the NES as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I think at this point it's probably worth opening up to some questions. So I don't know if there are any in the chat that you saw, Jamie, that you wanted to address.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just try and run them through from the top. So Jesper has asked whether anybody's tried using Backdrop with Agere. And we haven't specifically, we don't use Agere. So I don't know if there's any experience that anybody wants to share on that point. If not, I'll just keep us moving through.
Doesn't seem like anyone, but I'm sure it's been mentioned before. I've seen in the community.
Yeah, but it's certainly worth posting a overflow or putting that wider on Mattermost. And we've got Kennedy. Are you using Drupal web forms along with the web forms CiviCRM integration module? If so, have you upgraded to Drupal 10 and were you successful in migrating the web forms after the upgrade? So we've had some mixed experiences of that. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'd also be interested to hear others' experience if anybody's got any to share. I think the only thing I would be able to add to that is that it's certainly something that you need to test. So some do upgrade, but obviously the more complex your web form, the more likely there is to be some risk. And Jesper has a good question here, which is my understanding was that Drupal 7 was reaching end of life in part because end of life is on core dependencies like Symfony. And are you also supporting deprecated dependencies as part of the NES? So I think that the first thing here is that I don't believe specifically Symfony is needed for Drupal 7 itself. But I think the point around the dependencies is important in terms of MySQL and PHP versions and how long you can continue to run Drupal 7 based on the versions that they have. So what Hero devs have said to me is that they will continue to support the dependencies, not specifically the dependencies themselves, but the version of Drupal they offer will continue to work with or have compatibility with the dependencies that it has at the date of end of life. So specifically the PHP versions and the MySQL versions and things like that. And actually that is one of the considerations that you need to think about carefully in terms of CiviCRM will continue to support newer dependencies and Drupal 7 may will obviously keep its older ones. What I would say though is that doing a Drupal PHP version update isn't such a big job. You can get around and fix those kind of little PHP elements. So we'd expect that to continue if you think about the longer term. But then you need to think about MySQL and some other bits and pieces there as well. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on over if you're looking to do it, say, for more than a year or two. Did that answer that question, Jesper? Hopefully.
Yep.
Stuart asked, you mentioned patches, or will distributions be an entire D7 and or CiviCRM table? So From the D7 perspective, what I understand is that Hero Devs will make a repo available. And so you'll have access to that repo, then can integrate it into your tools as you need. And I think that CiviCRM will work in the same way, which will be a separate repo, but it would be similar to the way that the I wanted to say LTS there, but it's not the LTS. For CiviCRM will works at the moment. So it'll be again being access to a repo. Could backdrop eventually be migrated to 10 or 11? And Coleman happily answered that yes. So it's a similar point as to moving from Drupal 7 to 10 or 11. If you're moving from backdrop, you will need to do the same thing, as in build a new Drupal 10 website and migrate your content over. I don't know, Coleman, if there's anything to add there. Okay, great. And then Dominic's asked a question. What is the expected lifetime for D11? Do we expect D11 to DNext to be as painful as D7 to... So the way that the last few years with Drupal outside of D7 have been a little bit, I wouldn't say painful, but Drupal have kind of been upgrading almost annually, which has meant that, and deprecating, API functions and things like that at quite a rapid pace. They're expecting that D11, I believe, is going to be around for at least 2 years, which should reduce, that impact somewhat, and the same for D10. So there should be a longer lifespan in order to give you more time to move. And no, those moves are not as painful as a D7 to D8. D7 to D8 is a complete rewrite, but they're not pain-free, which was one of the surprises I think that a few clients had. So you are upgrading from one version of the software to another, and need to consider that customizations and modules and things like that may not work with your new versions. And Doug sharing some thoughts. Thank you, Doug. It's been a bit disappointing with Drupal. And that's why we wanted to share some other options here. I think the new versions of Drupal are extremely powerful, but it's worth being aware of what else is available. And then James is asking, so NES will keep Drupal 7 secure on an ongoing basis? Yeah, so what Hero Devs, correct me if I'm wrong, Louise, are offering is basically that they will patch or provide the same service that you're getting from the Drupal community as it stands at the moment for both Drupal 7 core, but also for, I think it's over 11,000 of the community contributed modules. So they will, if there is a security issue, they will patch those and release new versions basically available following the same level of SLA as the current community does.
Yeah.
That answers that question, James. Paul, does CiviCRM Standalone support LDAP AD? That's maybe a question for Coleman. We still have him? Maybe we've lost
him. Yeah, I think we might have lost him.
Lost Coleman. I will pass that one on and see if we can get an answer. And James is asking, we use the content access module with CiviCRM memberships and Drupal roles to run a members area on our site. I got very excited when I heard about Backdrop, but it doesn't look like there's a content access equivalent. So James, one of the things is that it's not a big job to do to migrate any Drupal 7 module to Backdrop. So they can actually be migrated, but they do have to be tweaked. Sometimes it's as much as like 2-line change, but sometimes it can be a little bit more because it does things a little bit differently in some places. So you can look at that migration potentially there, but part of the process of moving or looking at Backdrop is to do that analysis of, we have these modules in our site, these are the ones that are available in Backdrop out of the box, and these are the ones that are not, and therefore migrating over those modules from Drupal 7 to Backdrop and adding them to the Backdrop community is available. And I think we're just running out of time, but we'll try and take this one last question here from Caroline. Would Drupal 7 NES have a similar contract restriction from the redistribution similar to the CiviCRM ESR branch? Yes, I would anticipate so, which is that, obviously the goal is for hero devs to, make a return on their investment of doing so. So I think it's licensed on either a per site or per developer basis. So if you do have some questions about how you about how that works, then please contact Louise or ourselves at hello@compuco.io, and we can get you some more information about how the pricing is structured. I think we've run over a little bit there, Alec, but hopefully.
I think it's worth answering people's questions, as that's what we were aiming to do today. So yeah. I hope that's been helpful for everyone. I will just say, just before we end, we do have coming up later in the month a Civi meetup we're going to do kind of on the basics of reporting. So if you do want to sign up to that, make sure to do that. But otherwise, yeah, thanks everyone for attending today and learning more about the options for D7. Still plenty of time to do something, and hope we've presented it. And if you do have any more questions, of course, we're here to talk about D7 NES or Mattermost. There's so many community resources you can draw upon for this. But yeah, just make sure you ask your questions, and you don't need to make the decision without asking people who have spent a lot of time looking at this, because the community, obviously, it's a big thing for us. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Have a great day wherever you are.